Hello, my name is John Silva. Today we're going to talk about metal. How to paint it, how to identify types, how many there is. We're not going to cover every single one of them, but at least the most common ones. So before we actually start painting, it's very important that we do a little bit of research. So bear with me until we actually get into the juicy bits. Now, here's a couple of examples. We got 6 examples here. So we start off with aluminium, brass, cast iron. Now, cast iron is just iron that is poured into a mold. It's melted and then it's poured into a mold and then, well, it's casted, right? Then we got our favorite, gold and copper, which is very, very used, and steel. That's another very commonly used metal. So we're just gonna go with a few of these examples. You can research more in deeply. You can go ahead and know all the types of metal. But for the sake of making this video short, we're gonna go ahead and go to the next step, which is identify the differences. Now, it's pretty self-explanatory, but basically you look at a picture, or if you actually have, gold somewhere in your house or any other type of metal, then you can go ahead and just observe it, right? Try to identify what makes gold look like gold, what makes aluminium look like aluminium or chromium, right? So I got a few pointers here. Try to, I advise you to write it down and have these kind of pointers that you observe um, somewhere where you can look at frequently and kind of like refresh your memory with. So first of all, we got gold. I have it written here. It's a bright red/yellow color transition, soft and malleable. Now, depending of the light source of each single metal, regardless which one it is, of course the colors are gonna change, but in its own natural, like sunlight kind of um, light setup, then this would be your common kind of colors for gold. Now, aluminium, silver, whitish color transition resists corrosion. Now, this is very important. Not only aside from the colors and identifying maybe the smoothness, or how much reflective it is, it also very important to know what each metal can do. So aluminium is very cool because it resists a lot of corrosion. A lot of things are made of aluminium, right? Because of that one specific thing. It's very light, and it's also very malleable like gold, and it's very cheap because Earth has a large amount of it. It's very common to find it. So that's a pretty cool, pretty neat thing to know. And chromium. Now this is a badass metal because chromium, I believe it's the number one strongest metal on Earth currently, or known right now. So the colors, a steel whitish color transition, highly specular, yeah, strongest metal. Now, when I say silver white color transition or bright red yellow color transition, is that it's never set in just one color range. It always shifts between two kind of colors. Of course, like I said, the light source has a lot to do with it. But it's very important that you know that it's not just one single color most of the time. So yeah, and now the next most important thing is metal processing. Now, when you look at gold, usually you already see it being processed, like someone already smelted it and forged it. Usually you're not gonna see the raw material. But it's still very important to know the process. So the metal is mined. You can see here. In this case, gold. This is how it looks like. You can see a little bit of rock in between the gold bits being kind of like merged together. Then they take those gold pieces and they smelt it at a very freaking high temperature. They make it able to they melt it, right? Or in this case, they smelt it. Then they put it in a shape, and basically they cast it, and then they forge it. Now, the forge process is something that you should look into as well, because, well, number one, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool to see the commentaries, or even just go on YouTube and watch the commentary in there. Now, the forge process is actually also very important too, because that can make the metal that it's being processed either smooth, rough, have some shapes, have something, as you can see, written on it. You can do anything you wanted with it. You can make it super polished, like you can see your reflection in it, or you can make it semi-rough. It's important because like how much it's glossy, it's gonna depend on how it's being forged, right? And then treated. And the last part, talking about glossiness, here's a little example of, reflection glossiness in, well, mainly metal, because metal can go from to both extremes quite easily. But this can also be applied to other materials, but we won't get too much into that. As you can see, honestly, I have no idea what those numbers are. I guess these are... Now, I have absolutely no idea what it is, but visually you can see it goes from being mirror reflective to very matte down here. And this all depends of how much polished the metal actually is. Now that we're done with a little research, I really advise you to do this on your own. You can just write it down. You can make it all pretty and nice, like I made it. It's up to you. And we're gonna get into actually painting it. So I got here 3 cubes, and on top of them you can see the left side raw gold, the middle it's a weathered steel, and on the right side is going to be a polished copper. So right now they're just gray, but we're going to turn them into exactly these things. So yeah, we're going to get right into it, and I'll stop if I have something more to add. First of all, we're gonna change the color of this. Now there's several ways you can do it. I'm actually gonna select it, cut it, and just to make it quicker, because it's grayscale right now, I'm gonna change it to, so according to our research, we noticed that it's reddish to yellow kind of color transition. So I'm gonna choose right in between those two. The saturation of it also depends of the environment. We're gonna make it saturated because of the shadows. Click OK. Now there's this pretty neat tool that if you go to, I believe, image adjustments and replace color here, this little thing pop up, and I can select, for example, my lights, just the area where it's going to be affected. I can switch the hue, like as you can see, this is pretty neat tool. So as we said, reddish to yellowish mostly noticeable on the highlight parts. We're gonna little below saturation of it higher, so maybe right bordering a little bit of green, because that happens as well. lighter right there. About it. Now we're gonna do the same for the shadow bits. It really saturated in the shadows actually, and more towards red. So go. Yeah, alright. Good. I can see a little bit of a gray area. Those grays, because this is gonna be raw gold, actually we're gonna make those grays be more of a, see if I can do this, be more of the earth part, or brown. Actually, you know what, we're gonna do that by hand. We're gonna pick here color. Now there's gonna be gold and rock mixed in together, as we saw on the reference sheet. And yeah, I'm gonna paint it and we'll talk later. Alright, so we have our main basic shapes. The color is not quite there, but you can see the gold lumps all over the place and the darker spots where the dirt is actually gonna be. Now, I'm gonna use, I could go ahead and just grab a more saturated color and then paint all in between, but actually to make it faster, color dodge is really good for this. So I have my color dodge set to highlights, exposure 81, and protect tones ticked on. Now I'm gonna tap it in some areas where when the light hits the gold pieces, it's gonna make a vibrant red and yellow, like in between the red and yellow there's a very vibrant orange band to it. That's basically what we're gonna look for, is that in between. You know, we're gonna make it lighter, but also that in between orange that makes it glow and looks really well, makes it look really gold-like. So yeah, basically we're gonna do that all over the place, and then there's only one last step and then we'll finish it. Also, one thing great to mention is that in those areas where there's more of this orange that I just talked about, it's also very reflective. Now, naturally, looking at the going back and even looking at the reference of the raw gold, you can see that it's quite reflective, even when it's just mined like that. Um, so we're gonna incorporate that into our little golden square here, and it should look very gold like, you know. The rest is just rendering. Keep working at it, refining it, and make it look good. But in terms of reflectiveness and color wise, this is pretty much how gold reacts. So let's get to that. Even then, on the rendering stage that we are right now, we're tightening things up, making it prettier, makes the shapes you know, divide a little bit better between the gold and the actual red rock. We still keep in mind that in the light is yellowish in between orange and the dark red. So even though we did all of the adjustments, that's why you prepared the base, and it's very important you spend some time or most time on the base and then just build up from that. Try not to change too much. Even when rendering, you can lose some things, but always just keep in mind what you just learned, all of the research that you've just done. Keep that in mind, and whatever you decided, whatever you observed and you notice, keep that in mind even when rendering, because I mention this because it's quite easy to get lost in the rendering phase and kind of just throw everything out of the window and just kind of render uh, and being in kind of like autopilot. So right now I'm noticing that as I render, I'm keeping the colors as I mentioned, but I'm losing that glowiness to it. So I'm gonna grab a soft brush and set it into, let's do that right now actually. So I'm gonna grab a soft brush and like this that has a little texture to it. I'm gonna set it to color dodge. So it's essentially like the color dodge tool, except I can put a color onto it. So I could even like pick blue and it would have that effect. That's essentially what I'm gonna do. So I want a bit of more that redness to it. So I'm gonna pick red like that. I'm gonna gently, as I pass, so basically this is what I'm doing. I'm gently passing with my brush, and then in some spots I'll go harder. And that's basically what we're gonna do and continue rendering. All right, so a few more things that we've been observing on the reference sheet is that on the shadow side of the gold parts, actually, you can you can notice that there's a um, slight difference of having it harder or softer. So, okay, cut this. All right, so one thing that I wanted to mention as well, and I observed and noticed, is that if you notice on here on the, okay, cut that. So, actually, all right, so one thing I observe is that on the shadow side of the gold pieces, actually it becomes very soft. The edge of it, and this is important, where the light is not hitting, it blends very nicely. It has a nice soft edge, even against the rocky bits, as opposed to where the light hits, which is on, see here on the left side. Um, I think that's a pretty neat thing to actually add to your when you're painting and you're trying to render gold, in this case raw gold, but the exact same thing happens in processed gold. It's just the way the material shines and the glossiness of it in light versus shadow, it gives this very sense of sharp versus soft feeling, and that most likely has to do with the fact that gold is a soft material. You know, I mean, well, you can pick it up and shape it. Actually, kind of can if it's thin enough, but it's a material that's very easy to smelt and mold it and do whatever you want with it. Uh, I believe that that has to do a lot with the fact that in the light it's gonna become sharp and has this like shine to it. It's sharp, but there's a glowiness to it overall. Also because of the round shapes of it. And in the shadow, there is very soft edges in some areas where it almost blends, but still there's a little bit of glowiness to it. So I feel like that's a pretty neat thing to do. I'm gonna go ahead, wrap this up, and talk to you in a bit. there you go. We're finished with our raw gold cubish looking like piece, and I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you for the next one, which is weathered steel.